Hello and welcome to week 1. Let's go ahead and get started. So, one of the important things to do is make sure that you have access to Canvas, that you know how to click through Canvas. And something that I would strongly suggest is going ahead and downloading the Canvas app, just because it can be really helpful when you guys are on the go. You are able to check how you're doing, check where you're at. You can do discussions, that type of thing. So I found it really helpful to make sure that students go ahead and have the app for the class. So a little bit about me. I've been a psychologist for over 5 years now. I really love what I do. I nerd out about psychology. I find it super fascinating. Here on the slide you can see pictures of my family. So that's our daughter, and we really like to travel. So we get her every other Christmas. So we've been able to do some traveling. Over on the left, we've got a picture of us scuba diving in Mexico. Top right is Japan for our first family vacation. And then that bottom right picture is us coming back from Vietnam. So we have a lot of fun. We try to be very adventurous. In terms of my approach to teaching, I tend to view myself as not the only expert in the room. So you guys also have expertise, you also have life experiences, and I want you to bring those into the classroom because I think it makes for a richer experience, and it creates this situation environment where we're all learning from each other as opposed to me being the expert. One of my main focuses for the class is to be as supportive to you guys as possible, and I want to make sure that the environment is set up so that you're learning, because I think it's such a fun class and it's so much that we're going to cover. So I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of the class as possible. So if there's anything that you need, any suggestions or feedback that you have, or I'm human, sometimes I tend to miss things. So if you're like, hey, I don't see this on Canvas, please shoot me an email or a text and let me know, and I will try and do whatever I need to help point you in the right direction or to fix whatever the issue or concern is. So I talked a little bit about being supportive already. I want to try and keep you guys engaged, so you'll see there's a meme here in the slideshow. I'll try and throw memes in. I try and show, I'll add in like movie examples or clips and that type of thing, just to try and keep you guys engaged. That way you're not just listening to me drone on and on. One of the things to pay attention to is psychology can have a huge impact, right? It touches pretty much everything in our lives, how we interact, how we view the world. And so as you go through this class, try to pay attention to and increase your awareness about how you interact with others, how psychology impacts your own life and the lives of your friends or family. So just increasing awareness about psychology in general, and of course therapy orientation specifically. I want to make sure that I'm creating a safe environment for the class. I think that learning occurs more and more effectively when we feel safe and when we're able to focus on learning instead of maybe focusing or worrying about what someone else says or how someone else might respond. So if there are any concerns, make sure that you let me know, please. And along with that, I want to highlight that I'm also human. I also tend to make mistakes. And so if there are any concerns, please bring that up to me. The last thing I want to say here is the author, in the first chapter, he talks about what his philosophy is regarding therapy. And so I want to kind of tag on to that our values, our attitudes, our beliefs, all of those things play a role in not only who we are, but why we act the way we act. And so it's really important to pay attention to what are your beliefs, what are your values, and as you're writing discussion posts or as you're creating or completing class assignments, paying attention to how those things might be impacting you, but also how those things might end up impacting whatever clients you end up working with in the future. Our role as therapists is not to, we're not in the business to give advice or force people to change or solve all of our clients' problems. And so part of that is making sure that we're aware of what our own beliefs and attitudes and values are. Throughout the class, we're going to be introduced and learn more about two cases, that's Stan and Gwen. For the older version of the textbook, so you guys who have the PDF version, that's edition 9, each chapter only has one case, either Stan or Gwen. For future or later editions, like the 10th edition, the 11th edition, both cases are in each chapter. So just pay attention to that as you're going through and completing like the little blurbs. I think it's really helpful to have case examples, and I think it's also really helpful because the cases are actually broken down into each therapy approach that we're going to be seeing. So you can kind of see for the same clients how each approach would handle or work with that specific client. In terms of working with clients, here's kind of an outline of what we tend to be thinking about or considering. We're going to be working on the client's goals and helping them move towards their goals, but there's a lot of other things that we're also considering when working with a therapy client. And that's, what are their past experiences and how are their past experiences impacting or created who this person is today? And also paying attention to where is this client trying to go in the future? So who they were in the past, who they are presently, and where they're at in life, in relationships, in their career, are they in school, what are they doing presently in terms of behaviors that are working, that are not working, and how do we kind of take all of that information and help the client move towards their goals and towards terminating therapy, in the sense that we want our clients to get better, right? We want them to get to a point where they've achieved what they came to achieve, they've fixed whatever problem they have, and they're then able to go back and continue life, or continue life without continued therapy for a prolonged period of time. The last thing I'll say about that in terms of the cases is a lot of the cases in the textbook, it's a textbook example, right? So cases in therapy in real life might not look that neatly tied up in a bow. We'll be doing different assignments and discussion posts over the course of the semester, and I've really tried to break this down in a way that it kind of focuses on two different approaches. One is, who are you as the student? What are your experiences and views? And then what are the experiences or views of the client? And kind of focusing on both to bring you as the therapist or the therapist in learning together with the client and whatever the client's experiences and goals are, etc. And so those two brought together will be us focusing on what therapy approaches would work best for you or interest you as a psychology student, and then what therapy approaches would work best for the client based on what they have going on or based on their own life experiences. So that's kind of how the discussion posts primarily are broken down, and then you'll see that throughout the presentation and the final paper, where I'm asking things like, what are your views of this therapy approach? What resonates most with you? Why would you choose this therapy approach over this therapy approach? So there's a lot of different therapies. There's over 400 therapies that have been developed. And so obviously we can't cover all of that in one class. So we're going to be covering some of the main ones, and we'll be looking at different techniques, different approaches, different theorists, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So what I want to do is give like a sentence or two really brief overview of each therapy approach that we'll be covering for the class. So starting out with psychoanalytic therapy, this was developed by Sigmund Freud, and this is a theory of personality development and a philosophy of human nature. And so Freud believed that not only were unconscious factors at play and that those unconscious factors motivate behavior, but he also believed that the very early years in life are primarily what determined later development of personality. So for Freud, he really focused on those developmental years, ages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was his primary focus. Adlerian therapy, so this was developed by Alfred Adler. And this approach focuses on the client taking responsibility, so creating one's own destiny, finding meaning and goals to create a purposeful life. And the key concepts from this approach are used in many different therapies moving forward. So Adlerian therapy kind of built this bedrock, if you will, and then future therapies kind of continue to pull from Adlerian therapy. Existential therapy, there are several key developers for this approach. This focuses on human existence, such as our choices, our freedoms, our responsibilities, and ability to shape our own life and what we want out of life. And it focuses on relationships between the therapist and the client. So, Gestalt therapy was developed by Fritz and Laura Perls, and it is an experiential therapy stressing awareness and integration. It also grew as a reaction against psychoanalytic therapy. So, it integrates the mind and body, which is hugely important. A lot of times, clients don't realize that there's this body mind connection where, hey, what I'm thinking impacts my body, how I'm feeling, and vice versa. Behavioral therapy, so this approach applies the principle of learning behaviors and using that to fix or change behaviors. And part of this approach is continually experimenting to see what does or doesn't work. So, for example, hey, I'm really struggling with going to the gym and finding the motivation to go to the gym. And so, experimenting and saying, okay, well, what will work to make that change for you? For example, try laying your gym clothes out the night before and seeing if that works, or try packing your gym clothes with you when you go to work, and then you can go straight from work to the gym. And so it's really experimenting with different behaviors to work and figure out what's going to work for me to move towards my goals or to fix whatever the behavioral problem is that I'm experiencing. So it's always this kind of constant process of refinement and figuring out if I change this or if I switch this, what's going to work. Cognitive behavioral therapy, this was developed by Aaron Beck, and this is one of the most popular and most studied therapies out there. It's very popular. It focuses on thinking and how our thinking impacts our behavior and influences our behavior. Beck has since passed away in 2021, but his daughter has continued to develop CBT, and as I mentioned, it's one of the most popular therapies out there. Rational emotive behavior therapy, this has continued to build on CBT, so it's also a cognitive therapy approach. It's very action-oriented. It stresses the role of thinking and belief systems as part of or the root of our personal problems. We've got reality therapy and choice theory. I really like this one. This was developed by William Glasser as well as other contributors. And it's based on choice theory, and it focuses on the client assuming responsibilities in the present, and through the therapeutic process, the client is able to learn more effective ways of meeting his or her needs. So this is a fun therapy I'm really going to enjoy when we get to this week. Feminist therapy, there are many key figures that contributed to this approach. A essential concept of the concern for psychological oppression of women is what this theory tends to focus on. And it also focuses on the constraints imposed by socio and political status to which women have been relegated. So, for example, this idea that women should be in the kitchen or that type of thing. It really explores women identity and development and self-concept and goals and aspirations and emotional well-being, and says, all right, well, if women kind of have been put in this box historically, what if we don't want to be in that box? What if we want to have our own career or not have children or etc.? So this is also a really interesting and fascinating theory. We've got postmodern approaches, and there's several approaches that fall kind of underneath the postmodern umbrella. That includes solution-focused brief therapy, which is, I think, a lot of fun, and narrative therapy, which is also a lot of fun. So instead of believing that reality is socially constructed through human interaction, this approach maintains that the client is an expert of his or her life. And so again, it's putting the ball back in the client's court, if you will, and saying, all right, what do you want out of life? How do we help you focus on that? How do we help you achieve that? This approach also assumes that there's no single one truth. So basically the idea that each individual has their own perception, and that perception is truth. Family systems therapy. So there are several different systematic approaches. This is one that we'll be looking at. And so this systemic approach is based on the assumption or the idea that the key to changing an individual is through changing and working with the family or the system as a whole. So a little bit different from some of the other therapies that we'll be looking at. So that's a lot of different therapies that we're going to be covering. We're going to be looking at a lot and learning a lot, and it's going to be so much fun. This is your discussion post for this week. This is in Canvas, so upload or post there. So one of the things that I want you guys to kind of pay attention to over the course of this semester is trying to put yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit in terms of what your discussion posts are, in terms of some of the different worksheets or exercises that we'll do in later classes. Say, for example, behavioral therapy, we'll be doing some exercises. You'll do them at home, and then I want you to post and discuss it as part of your discussion post for that week. And so try and step outside of your comfort zone in terms of exploring who you are and exploring what you think your work with a client might look like. And that's it for this class. Let me know if you've got any questions, comments, or concerns.